Good morning, Chancellor. I know you won't give me an indication of what is actually in the budget, and nor should you, but let's just start with what is technically possible. Given that the economy is in recession, do you actually have any room for tax cuts?
Well, it's going to be a prudent and responsible budget for long-term growth. And when it comes to tax cuts, I do believe that if you look around the world, countries with lower tax tend to grow faster, North America, Asia. And so I do think in the long run, we need to move back to being a lower taxed, more lightly regulated economy. But it would be deeply unconservative to cut taxes in a way that increased borrowing, wasn't fully funded. I think, if I think of the great tax-cutting budgets of the past, Nigel Lawson's budget in 1988, the reason that was so significant is because those tax cuts were permanent, and people need to know that these are tax cuts you can really afford. So it will be responsible, and everything I do will be affordable.
Well, I noticed you used the term in the long run there. I think it was Keynes, wasn't it, who said in the long term, we're all dead. Isn't the question here about what you're going to do now? And what I take from what you've just said to me is that we really shouldn't be expecting tax cuts this week.
Well, when I talk about the long run, I'm talking about the long run, which I'm hoping to be alive, just to clarify that point. But I am talking about changes that will make a difference in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. What I've learned as Chancellor is you can't have a massive impact on, 1 month's GDP figures or another month's inflation figures, but you can make profound changes that improve the ability of our economy to grow and to fund services like the NHS over the long run. That's what really matters. And that's why what I will be is prudent and responsible. And I think that's what people want to see, because they know we've been through a very difficult period, but they trust Conservatives to do the right thing with the economy. And we know, for example, if we stick to this plan, we are predicted to have faster growth than any large European country. So
forgive me, sorry, finish what you were saying.
No. So what I'm saying is that I think, we have grown faster than those countries since 2010. We will grow faster than those countries, but we need to stick to a solid, sensible plan that doesn't put that at risk.
What I'm hearing, if I may say so, is Chancellor, prudent, responsible, who is saying, by the way, if you re-elect us at next election, then over the long run, you will see reductions in taxes. Isn't it a problem that a lot of your colleagues in the Conservative Party on the backbenches want to see tax cuts now, before the election?
Well, all Conservatives believe that, the state has a moral duty to leave as much money in people's pockets as possible, because it belongs to the people who earn that money. But we all know that it is not Conservative to cut taxes, for example, by increasing borrowing, because then you're just passing on the bill to future generations. And so what you saw in the autumn statement was a turning point when we cut 2p off the national insurance rate. We will hope to make some progress on that journey, but we're going to do so in a responsible way.
OK, so we could see some more progress. I'm not going to ask you exactly what shape, but some progress on the journey which began with a 2p tax cut, national insurance cut, I should say. Well,
obviously I'm not going to speculate on what I'm going to do, but I do want to show people in an election year that eternal truth that Labour governments spend more and tax more, Conservative governments spend more wisely and try to bring the tax burden down. And if we're going to do that, one of the ways I have to show that we can do that is by being responsible with public spending and showing that we're going to spend it more carefully.
OK, well, one way, actually, that you could demonstrate that you want to do this is by raising a bit more money here and there. Now, you've previously ruled out Labour's idea of abolishing non-dom status, which costs Treasury something like £3.5 billion quid a year. Is non-dom status still safe?
I think you're going to probably ask me about lots of tax cuts, income tax. I think this morning the papers are talking about furnished holiday lets. Last week it was non-doms. Before that it was national insurance. Yeah. I'm not going to go into any details this morning. My views on most taxes are a matter of public record because people have asked me about them over the years. So you can see what I've thought and what I think about those particular issues, but I'm afraid not this morning.
Oh, but that's interesting because you're quite right. Your view is a matter of public record. In fact, we have the record here at Sky, and the record says that you think abolishing non-dom status would be a terrible thing to do because I think the number that you used was it would mean 8 billion, goodbye to 8 billion capital investment. So you have said, absolutely, we're never going to do that. But you're not saying that this morning.
Well, because I'm not talking about any tax cuts, Trevor. You're asking the question, as ever, in a very elegant and clever way. But I'm not going to comment on any tax cuts at all. It doesn't matter which tax cut, because you've got to give me a chance. And
all I'm saying is you did say that you wouldn't do this because you thought it's a bad idea, and I'm just remarking that this morning you're not saying it's a bad idea.
Because I'm not talking about any taxes at all. That's why I'm not saying it. I'm not going to go into any details about any tax, whichever tax you ask me about. That's the reason, Trevor. Because the budget's on Wednesday, that's why.
All right, let's talk about something that maybe you can talk about, and that's spending. You reported this morning, and let's talk about priorities for spending. You reported this morning that you're going to get rid of waste in civil service. And the bit of waste that you identify specifically is equality and diversity initiatives. Are you going to scrap all the equality and diversity initiatives in the civil service?
I think that breaking glass ceilings should be the job of every boss in every public sector organisation. But I'm not convinced that paying people large sums of money specifically to do those jobs is the right thing. I think that's subcontracting the responsibility. But more broadly, I think the civil service should return to the levels that it was pre-COVID. There was a big expansion, completely rightly, during the pandemic. But we need to get back to those pre-pandemic levels. And the point I would say is that what we want is better public services. That doesn't always mean spending more money. Sometimes it means spending less money, but we need to run them more efficiently. And this morning I've suggested some of the things we might want to do that will mean more efficient public services.
Indeed, spending on AI. But what I'm hearing here is a bunch of civil service jobs to go, the diversity officers for the firing squad. Let's try another public spending element, and that is defence. The former Prime Minister and Chancellor John Major, former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, and your current colleague, Penny Mordaunt, all said this week that if there's a choice between defence and pretty much anything else, defence has to come first. Do you agree?
Well, Trevor, the first responsibility of the government is the defence of the nation, and a year ago I gave £11 billion to the Ministry of Defence. Prior to that, the Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor, gave the Ministry of Defence the largest sustained increase in defence funding since the Cold War. So I think our record speaks for itself. But can I just say, when I talk about productivity, you said it's just AI. It's not. I want to talk about crime, actually, because it matters to a lot of people watching this programme. We have halved violent crime since 2010. One of the ways we've done that is through violence reduction units. They have saved or reduced about 130,000 knife crimes and other violent crimes, and 3,000 hospital admissions. We're going to roll those out. Now, that is extra money that we will spend. It will save the money, save the state money over the next few years. That's an example of something where we're spending money now to save money later for more efficient public services.
Well, let's talk about that. The Institute for Fiscal Studies announced this week shows pretty persuasively that if you stick to your plan of an average of 1% increase in nominal spending over the next few years, some departments are going to face real terms cuts because some departments, health service and so on, are going to be protected. I know that somewhere in there's a bit of provision for extra police officers, but in what the Prime Minister calls mob rule Britain, we're going to have to monitor more extremists. We're going to have to arrest more lawbreakers, put more people in court. You're not putting more money into dealing with crime, really, are you?
Well, I think we should be focusing on the results we get from our public services, not an arbitrary number that you put into spending. And if you want to talk about police, let's talk about that, because they had a fascinating pilot in Kent where they increased police response times when people. Now, this is important because you asked me about. Hang on, you asked me about mob rule, and I'm just explaining to you now. This is a context since 2010. It's important to say when many crimes, not just violent crimes, burglaries as well, have halved. But in Kent, they got the police response time down to 3 minutes when they allow people to report crimes by video, and they increased the arrest rate by 50%. So we are putting in more than £200 million to roll that out across the country. That is going to make the police more effective. It's going to bring down crime. That is improving productivity and the outcomes that people want. That's what I'm talking about. It's what we get out that matters.
All right. Let's talk about what the Prime Minister spoke about on Friday night. Referring to recent marches, he alleged that, I'm quoting here, our streets have been hijacked by small groups who are hostile to our values and have no respect for our democratic traditions. And he said to those who choose to continue to support marches each week, don't let the extremists hijack your marches. Can you name a group that isn't already banned that needs to be prescribed because of their actions on these marches?
Well, I'm not going to go into those details. That's a matter for the Home Secretary. But I would make this point, Trevor.
Well, the Prime Minister spoke about groups consistently in his speech.
Yes, I know, but let me answer you, because you made a point, a very important...
Let's not get into anonymity. You want to be practical.
Yes.
You've been saying that to me
well,
all
will
this
you let me answer
Name one.
I said I can't give you the name of one. What I can tell you is that the vast majority of British Muslims want to protest peacefully and within the law, and they have every right to do so. But we have seen examples of very intimidatory protests that have made other people feel unsafe. That is not the British way. And what the Prime Minister was saying is that what the Prime Minister was saying, we've all seen the scenes on our television. What the Prime Minister is saying is that we need to remember the British way is tolerance and understanding that the way for you get change is through peaceful protest and argument and persuasion. And he was reaffirming those very British values.
Forgive me, Chancellor, this is a very important point. Part of the British way is to be straight. When you say we've seen these protests and these people, which people are we talking about? Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about the scenes I've seen on television. I'm talking about the emails I've received from people who've been terrified by what they've seen in some of these protests. And I'm also saying, Trevor, very clearly... No, let me finish. It's a very important topic. That the
but you're not answering the question I'm asking you.
No, I'm telling you...
Who is it that you're talking about?
I don't know
intimidating?
Trevor, with the greatest respect, I don't know the names of people I see on television. What I do know is that I've had emails from people saying they are absolutely terrified. Jewish people absolutely terrified to go out of their houses because of some of the behaviour of a small minority. What I'm also saying is the vast majority of people on these protests want to do so peacefully and within the law, and we absolutely respect their right to do so. But when lines are being crossed, we need to call it out, and we need to be active in calling out extremism for what it is.
I've let you answer, but if you wouldn't mind answering my point. And the reason I'm asking this question is that when you and the Prime Minister speak of these anonymous forces or groups or organisations, it leaves people assuming that you must mean either anyone who has been on one of these marches or anyone who happens to profess the Muslim faith. If you know that this is happening, why can't you say what groups, and the Prime Minister specifically talked about groups and organisations, you mean?
Trevor, with the greatest respect, and I really enjoy being interviewed with you, but it does feel to me like you actually weren't listening to what I just said.
I was listening to exactly what you said.
What I just said was the vast majority of people are protesting peacefully.
That's not the point
and I did not say these people who aren't doing that are anonymous. I said I just happen not to know their names because I look at someone on television and just like you, I don't know their names. So I think I've answered your question with the greatest respect.
All right. The Prime Minister used this phrase, mob rule. Now, you know I've been around a long time. In the 1970s, I organised demonstrations with up to 100,000 students. In the 1980s, I covered the Brixton riots, Liverpool, Bristol, riots abroad in Eastern Europe. I do know what serious disorder looks like. Are you seriously making the case that what we see each Saturday when I walk through Westminster from Sky's studios is mob rule?
Well, let me put it this way. You know, I'm not Jewish, but I've been contacted by Jewish people who've told me that they are afraid to go outside their front door when those marches are happening. And I think it is very important that we restore the social fabric of this country so that people understand that when there are demonstrations, they will be peaceful and within the law, and they are not intimidatory. And I think we have seen some of that, and the Prime Minister was rightly saying we need to call that out.
Chancellor, thank you for your time this morning. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Trevor.